What you're about to hear is potentially one of the most enraging things I've heard in a while from The Rock. We love The Rock, we love Triple H, we love WWE, but listen to this.
We've established this idea of Cody's soul. We can always come back to it. I did feel, and I made the call, I don't want to be involved in that. Step back. Let the final boss step back into the shadows. Let all the spotlight go to John. Let it go to Cody. Let's not make it about Cody's soul eventually or John's soul. No.
The problem is they already made it about that. You literally made it all about that to where that was half of the story. Half of the story was John Cena turning heel, Cody Rhodes is a champion, WrestleMania, Cena versus that. But the other half was The Rock. That's what made the whole thing really even better. The Rock enhanced the story, and then they removed that part, and it de-enhanced the story. I don't think, and I understand what The Rock is saying here, but they made a mistake, to be honest. I honestly believe that. They made a mistake. In the short term, they made a mistake.
Let's let them do what they do. And I called John after Elimination Chamber, spoke to him, called Cody, and I said, I think the final boss's work is done.
So there you go, guys. They did have a plan to keep going with that. And then The Rock decided not to do it. So everybody that was like, this doesn't make sense. What about the soul? What about that whole thing? Like, why are we not getting any more conclusion to that? What the hell's going on? Well, there you go. The Rock pulled an audible on it and said, nah, let's back out of that whole thing. So everybody that's angry about that, there you go. The Rock pulled it away. So you were right. I was right. Everybody was right. What the hell happened to that thing? Everybody that said that you were wrong for questioning that, no, The Rock tells you right here that he completely just threw it out all of a sudden.
Establish it. We just pulled off the greatest angle in the history of professional wrestling, other than Hulk Hogan turning heel. Back in the 90s, I said, this is amazing. We have 6 weeks. Now, let's build. You guys go and crush it, and I'll be right there with you, and I'm always here if you need me, but I think it's best for the final boss not to be involved in that finish.
Then you shouldn't have been involved in the Elimination Chamber. You should not have started the story with that because WrestleMania felt like it was missing something, like part of the story wasn't finished, and it was that. Now, listen, I'll tell you, last year, they made all the right calls last year. They did, I don't think, anything wrong last year. But, boy, this was huge. This was a mistake. But I understand. It makes sense that The Rock would say this. But the problem is The Rock should have said this before they ever did the soul thing. The soul thing should have never happened. Travis Scott should have never happened. None of that should have happened. It should have just been John Cena turning heel on his own. Then it would have been just about Cena and Cody Rhodes. But when The Rock inserted himself with the soul and everything else like that, the audible doesn't work anymore. You needed to complete that story. Like, even if it was just The Rock showing up on the screen at the end of WrestleMania and saying, good job, John, blah, 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 blah. And there was like this background bad guy, villain, shredder character in the background. Like, even that would have helped a little bit with the long term of this whole thing. And I know you can still fix this and still do it, but people were expecting that at WrestleMania, and you didn't do it. So The Rock, they're so wrong here. They don't, this is The Rock. They made a mistake. The Rock screwed up. It's hard to say that because The Rock rarely screws up, in my opinion, whether it's alcohol, businesses, products, partnerships. The Rock does mess up once in a while. But The Rock gets a lot of stuff right, too, right? Movie roles, like The Rock is 80% of the time, The Rock does a damn good job with whatever it is, even if it's stupid. Partnerships with people, he's usually 90% dead on. Wrestling creative decisions, 90% spot on, and sometimes mega epic fashion spot on by The Rock. But I believe, and this is arguable, but I believe this is a massive failure and mistake. And really, honestly, it's not a failure because it's too big to fail, right? Deciding to back off and just have Cena take it with Cody, you really can't lose no matter what you do, but you really hit a 7 out of 10 when you should have hit a 10 or a 9. And that's my opinion. You can not agree with it, but I believe that there was something missing because I felt like there was something missing. And a lot of people said the same thing, and they couldn't get over the fact that there was no explanation or completion. People wanted the spiritual stuff. They wanted the mystery. They wanted the evil, like The Rock has some kind of Hollywood magic or something. They wanted some kind of weird shit to be going on. And At least some people did. Not everybody wanted that. But to not even like tie it in at all is weird.
You guys go. So they had
And maybe they did a little bit with Travis Scott, but I don't know.
6 weeks to plan for that. So I love the finish of the match. I would have finessed things a little differently on how they got there, but that's just me creatively.
The Rock agrees. Rock, you agree. I would have finessed things differently. I agree. The build wasn't that great. And I can tell by the way The Rock is acting here, The Rock doesn't really love the build. He thought it was all right, but he thought it could have been a lot better. He just told you that right there. By him sort of saying that, can you imagine what he really feels? He's not going to bury Triple H and bury the creative and bury everything. He's putting it all over. But he said, I would have finessed things a little differently. See that? So The Rock admits that the build wasn't that great. And The Rock admits that he pulled the whole great idea of the soul thing. So the soul was taken out of the match, in my opinion. So whether you disagree, you don't agree, you want to get mad at me, whatever it is, Triple H, Rock, John Cena, Cody Rhodes, if you're listening, and Cody Rhodes has been on this show before. Cody Rhodes, if you're listening, and you guys, if you're listening, it wasn't done the best. It really wasn't. It wasn't done the worst either. You guys are so good, so professional, and so amazing that you're too big to fail, to be honest. But quite honestly, the build was not good enough. And then removing the whole soul thing after you set this huge angle up at Elimination Chamber, the feud just went down. Every week it went down and down more, like, oh, this is more human and more regular and more human and more regular. But at Elimination Chamber, it set the bar like, wow, this is going to be nuts. And then in the end, it was just a straight old grumpy good guy went bad, heel John Cena. You kind of failed. To be honest. Like, I'm going to be honest. And The Rock is telling you right there. So anybody in the comments that wants to come at me and say, oh, no, Joe, the literal Rock is telling you. And if you're like, well, he didn't say that. He's saying he kind of would have changed something. Yeah, well, if he's saying that publicly, imagine what he thinks really behind closed doors. So The Rock isn't happy with it. I think The Rock is telling you right here he was happy with the end, how it turned out in the very end, which I agree was the best part, right? Because it's too big to fail. But the whole story leading up to it and the whole idea of the soul thing being removed the fun from the whole goddamn thing.
There are a lot of minds in the room. That's my thought. But still, ultimately, the bottom line was I love John getting 17. And I never had a concern about John pulling this off.
Because he's too big to fail.
My thoughts are always to Cody because of what we've established with him and his story and the kind of babyface that he is. So if done right, and I think if finessed right, and if nuanced right, down the road, that guy not only has an incredible babyface run again as champion, but also just an unheard of run as a heel.
Yeah. So The Rock talking about Cody Rhodes going heel. But what I get out of this interview is that The Rock feels that the story leading up to WrestleMania wasn't as good as it could have been. And he is the one who pulled the plug on the whole soul part of the story. And the funny thing about that is everything leading up to WrestleMania wasn't as good as it should have been, according to The Rock and according to me and according to many of you. But also The Rock admitting that him taking the soul part out of it, whether The Rock knows it or not, that was a mistake. And so for those reasons, The Rock here is actually the one that's legitimizing all of my complaints about the lead up to WrestleMania and what happened at WrestleMania. The Rock himself is legitimizing everything I've said and many of you have said and Luke Rojas has said and so many others. I'm Joe Cronin. This is the Joe Cronin Show. What are your thoughts? This is a bombshell by The Rock, by the way. And this is one of those times, even though we're making fun of Triple H because Triple H is out there like, man, things were better when kayfabe and people didn't know. But then Triple H every 2 seconds is breaking the fourth wall on a TV show, a press conference, or something else. And this is along the same lines, and I don't like it. But at least The Rock, this is super interesting because now I know who's at fault. Now I know how things went wrong. And it's not the end of the world. It's not like some horrible thing. It is what it is. Hey, listen, they made a couple mistakes. It didn't work out. They made a couple decisions that kind of hindered WrestleMania. You know, last year they made a couple of decisions that were awesome. This year they made a couple of decisions that hurt WrestleMania. I'll probably never watch WrestleMania 41 again, other than maybe the very end to see Cena win, I suppose, maybe. I thought Drew McIntyre and Priest was funny. Not a lot I'd rewatch again. WrestleMania 40, I'd watch it again a bunch. It is what it is. Not very good, and now we know why. If you're brand new to the channel, I hope you guys subscribe, and make sure you just molest that bell, because that bell is going to tell you if I'm live or not sometimes. The bell only works 15% of the time. You don't ring the bell, you get no notifications. You ring the bell, you get a 15% chance. If you really want to be notified, you become a patron on patreon.com/Joe Cronin Show, and then you get an email every time I upload anything, even for $1 a month. You cannot go wrong with $1 a month, okay? It's just a no-brainer. Plus, you get thousands of podcasts and things that you never heard before behind a paywall on Patreon. You'd never heard it. 10 years of content. Me and Jake, me and JB, Corrupted Podcast, hundreds of other podcasts, rants, raves, songs, hundreds of other things. Me and my wife, 20 episodes of Till Death Do Us podcast, and a ton of other stuff. If you want, leave a super thanks down below. I'll pin it to the top of this chat. But leave your comments about this whole situation as well, and I'll be live later on with a little bit more on this. The Rock basically spills the beans, and I love it. I'll talk to you guys later.